revenues in the first column and the special ed revenues in the last column is the $8,921 that we received from IDEA, or federal dollars, for preschool. So you see our total revenue for preschool is at $563,000. So then we start to break it down. There is a basic cost, as Tiffany mentioned, for every single preschool student. Every student is allotted the 1-to-8 ratio, and so we have the basic classroom costs associated with those students. Then in addition, our special needs students have an additional costs assigned to them because they have additional teachers working with them. Occupational therapists, speech therapists, what's called an ECEA, a preschool special needs provider, certified teacher. And those direct costs for our district for last year came to $274,000, which gave us an additional cost for those preschool students on a per student basis of $6,855. Obviously, we don't have that with the CPP students or the tuition-based students. We also have a director and her staff and her costs, additional child find costs, which is the program that Karen talked about earlier, where we have a group of people go out and evaluate the child and determine what services are needed. So the total cost per student for this CPP students comes to the basic cost of $2,852. The tuition students of $2,352, the major difference being there that we did not need to do the child find work there. And then for the special needs student, you see $10,637 per student. So our total outlay is over in the right-hand column of $780,000 per student, which then gives us on this last page net income, and I do need to point out that this is before overhead and facilities costs. This is just the direct cost, if you will, of this particular program. On the CPP students, $786 per student. Tuition paying students, $312 per student. And then you see the exceptional needs students, which we discussed earlier, of $6,775 per student over revenues. So the direct costs to the district, you see a net of $207,000 per student based on last year's data.
So obviously the state is not funding us enough, even in preschool, to take care of special needs.
Correct. And I would point out that for preschool, our federal funds are lower on a per student basis than they are for the K-12 students as well.
So when we looked at centralization or not, there's obviously pros and cons on each side of the coin. So the pros for centralizing, and we looked at the pros. Personally, I looked at the pros as it applies to the student. What is best for our students and our teachers and our staff? The pros are the consistency in instruction, the efficiency in space. Preschool parents and providers work and learn together. The current school configuration, obviously, centralizing also helps with the growth, but it also helps with our ability to increase services for all our students. Our therapists aren't driving around from school to school to school with windshield time. They're all right there, collaborating together. It also reduces costs because the resources, the materials are all located centrally, so they're all in the same space. Even playground equipment, when maintenance and grounds, they're not having to repair equipment at multiple schools. There's one set of playground equipment that they're concentrating on. So you have staff that are able to collaborate with each other and give students educational opportunities right there in the same location. You're reducing costs because your resources are down in the same location, and you're increasing space throughout the school district because everybody's located in the same area. The cons are, as was mentioned, the connection with the building and the role models of their elder peers in their neighborhoods and their siblings. But my personal opinion, and it seemed to be an opinion that was shared, is those cons are easily overcome. For example, field trips or collaborating with other schools where students are able to come to the preschool or preschool are able to go to the students. For example, my own child just had a field trip to Prairie Winds Elementary from the high school to mentor some peers. So that's easily overcome. So we felt that the pros outweighed the cons.
Hold on, before we move on. convenience to our parents, why isn't that there?
I think, just to be very frank, because we talked about putting students first, and this was all about students and not the adults.
But I get it, but it's not all about students. There's a cost associated with doing this. So this is a business decision. And I understand that, you know, what we do is all about the kids, but we also have to be fiscally responsible with our taxpayers' dollars. So is it not appropriate that we're in a business, so to speak, and we know for a fact that when kids come to our schools as preschool, they stay there. We know that. That is a fact. So if we centralize, we know we're gonna lose kids. I mean, it's because if a parent lives down by by Bear Creek, and they have to run their kid, let's say that we put it, so there's a lot more to this from a business standpoint. When you talk about centralizing, where is that building? If that building's like right behind us, there could be some parents down in Jackson Creek that it's just not gonna work for them to drive up to that centralized location up here and then go to work. Now, I get it's better for kids, I get it. But if we lose that kid and all of a sudden they're driving through District 20 and they drop their kid off at Antelope Trails, that has a preschool, will we lose that kid in our district?
And then there's the, you know, ladies, first of all, wonderful presentation, but, you know, my wife with 5 kids, it was all about convenience. You know, we took my kids to, you know, good, competent preschools that were close by. So, you know, maybe I'm out of line, but I think convenience is a big factor for families with multiple kids attending school at multiple venues.
So if you want to add that as a con, you can,
Okay.
as long as a student is attending preschool. So if a parent drops their child off at a private preschool, the preschool education is what is important to the students. And so whether they're attending our preschool or another preschool, now are those parents going to go and stay at Antelope Trails or not? I can't get in the minds of parents. I can tell you, I, as a preschool parent, when I had to take my children to centralized preschool, when it came time for them to go back to their elementary school, they went back to our neighborhood elementary school because our neighborhood elementary school was more convenient to ride the bus. Whereas we don't provide bus transportation for our preschool students, we do provide bus transportation
Right.
for our neighborhood children. So again, it goes back to that convenience.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would kind of echo what Mark said this way, though. You know, a long time ago, we built smaller schools in the neighborhood, and there were more of them, which cost more money for convenience. And I think in terms of cost that we're talking about here, my guess is that consolidated preschool will save the district money, but it's gonna cost parents more money, those who participate. So there is a trade-off. We just have to recognize, in my mind, that there are trade-offs. And I tend to agree essentially with the message that I don't think we've elaborated quite extensively enough on the cons, because as a parent, I would want my child to go near home. But that's just my feedback. But there are trade-offs. I mean, it's like we've designed a school now that's 650. Well, that'll be the largest elementary school in our school district, and in part, it's due to cost. And so, you know, cost shouldn't drive every decision, but at the same time, we have to recognize the trade-offs, I believe.
Well, we have to understand, I mean, I get it's all for kids, and I'm right there. I've been that way through this whole thing, but we need to learn from other experiences. We know there was a lot of reasons why the decision was made to close Grace Best. And one of the things that was recognized behind that was kind of like this marketing of location, location, location. And we've learned, one of the reasons why I don't think we've remodeled it and reopened it is because we've seen from a lot of experts, it's in the wrong place. Logistically, it's bad, you know, to drop kids off. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why we've struggled with that decision with Grace Best about not reopening it. And when we converted Creekside to Bear Creek, you know, it's kind of like that build it and they will come. All of Jackson Creek, we were losing kids to Antelope Trails. all of those kids came back and now it's packed. So I don't want to, what I'm concerned about is if we make a decision to place something that's not in a good strategic location, they're not going to come to, and I get we're doing it for the right reason. I get it's best for kids, but if the parents can't, you know, for their personal lives or for, you know, their, I think kind of what Matt was saying, if it doesn't fit their schedule, then I think we're going to find that we're not going to kind of fill those seats, if you want to call it that, even though it's preschool. I'm sure it's not seats, maybe carpet space. But, so I guess I'm kind of, you know, and not seeing that one of the cons is central, you know, convenience to our customers. I'm concerned, what is the philosophy behind what's driving this?
So we're getting to that.
Okay.
But I do want to point out also, keep in mind that our families that attend Palmer Lake Elementary School are indeed bringing their children down here. Our children that attend, our families who have children that attend Prairie Winds Elementary School are indeed having to drive their children to Bear Creek or Lewis Palmer or right here. Our Kilmer families, I hear you, because they would be impacted because they're further out east and there is 2 preschools currently there. But as we're growing, we're running out of room. So the driving factor, and that's what we were getting to.
Well, one of the things, just, I'm sorry to interrupt, is get that if you're in Palmer Lake, where are they probably going to work in the Springs? So they're going to come down through Monument and it's on their way to the Springs. Now,
Or
some of them may go
Denver.
to Denver.
Yeah.
So I get it, but we have to be very cautious about centralizing from the standpoint of, is it going to fit our community?
Fair enough, and I agree that there will be families that may not want to, and hopefully they will still find a good fit, because that's what the ultimate goal is when I studied this, is to find the best fit that meets each kid where it's at, and making sure that we are, and that doesn't just include preschool, that does include all of our students. And so when you ask what was driving this, one of the things that drove it was the elephant in the room, our space and our capacity, and saving money with being efficient and centralizing for the efficiency of an instructional perspective and meeting the kids from a student perspective. So when we looked at our neighborhood schools. We looked at how it has a great connection to the buildings, and however, exceptional needs cannot be met as well as a center-based program. And we do have that legal obligation. Our services provided students that are most impacted, whether English learners, our Colorado preschool program children, our exceptional needs program can have needs more efficiently met at a center-based program. We had discussions with our administration, our long-term facilities planning, our DAC forums, talking to preschool parents as well, having that community engagement. And consistently the findings seem to be that centralizing made the most sense for both students and facility shortfalls. So when you're asking what the drive was, this is what the drive was.
I agree with everything you said. And when we first started preschool, the philosophy then was that students would be placed in the homeschool. I mean, that's an ideal world. I mean, that's what we wanted, and that's what was best. But now you have the dilemma of space. And so that's what's bringing this whole conversation. And I don't envy you because it's a tough decision. You need the space. Bear Creek, especially, that has the largest number of students, they need space for the incoming K through 6th or 5th grade, whatever the configuration is, in the future. So then where do we put preschool? That's what's driving this. So this is not a presentation to say this is what's best. This is just telling you this is our dilemma, and what do we do with our preschoolers? Because we know through this presentation we have to do something for our preschool. A lot of talk out there is about just don't worry about preschool. Then don't worry about preschool kids. Just focus on, I mean, I've heard it myself. Folks have come up to me and say, why do we care about little kids. I mean, that's just play. And that's the purpose of this presentation, to show you that it is the basis and foundation for student success, like kindergarten and first grade was. So you've got this dilemma of, and I don't envy you, I admire you to make a decision of, how do we fix this? So this is an option. That's all this presentation is.
Well, just to, and I don't agree with what I'm about to say, just to let you know before I say it. I mean, first off, we don't have the option of walking away from preschool. I mean, that is correct, right? I mean, we have by state.
That is correct. We have to offer it.
We have to offer it. So I think when people make statements about, I mean, the research is out there. I mean, this is not, I mean, it's, I would be very concerned about anyone who says that as a school district, we should walk away from preschool, because we know if we build a great foundation, we're all about that. I get that there's this, in the 12th grade, you have the finish line, but you only have one chance at each grade to get it right, and preschool is the best foundation.
And the other thing I'd ask, because I have heard, well, you should just limit the enrollment. We can't do that either, because we have to maintain that typical peer ratio. So we can't just start saying we're only going to accept 2 people paying tuition, because that would not maintain the required ratio.
I mean, we've seen just by this, the word typical.
Agreed.
I get it.
That's a state, that is a state term.
I'm good. Whatever
don't
word
love
we
it either.
use, 2 years from now, it's the wrong word.
Yeah.
Or exactly. My phone's going to start going, We're actually making money on that. It's the SPED we're not making money on. I mean, so really the
Correct.
state needs to step
But
up to the plate.
We're covering our costs would be a better description of how we're
So,
breaking
right.
even.
And that's fine. I
Right.
mean, we're not really in the money-making business.
Right.
I mean, we're in the education business. So, yeah, I'm all for preschool. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. So I'm sorry.
Let me add a question here. This is more about just practicality. So if we had some level of centralization, you've already noted that there's some centralization already. Does it make any sense that you would associate them to your middle schools, which are geographically north and south, if you will?
You could.
And then have the same program that you're talking about for centralization anyway, with trips to the various elementary schools in the north or south?
We actually had, is this working?
Yes.
We actually had a preschool at Palmer Ridge with high schoolers.
Yes, we did.
And we only closed it because of the whole concept there. It was something new we tried, with that the teachers at the high school, staff members would enroll their children. Well, the enrollment was too low, and so we couldn't afford it. But we actually had high school, a preschool at a high school, and it worked beautifully. Those high schoolers were volunteering. They made it part where they can get credit for coming into the classroom. It was a great, if you would, marriage. It was wonderful.
Might I suggest that maybe we conclude the presentation, and then if we have questions, we could address them at this point. Looking through some of the slides, some of these questions may already be answered.
So let's start with the obvious one that we looked at. And that's actually where I had my own personal growth experience, was when we looked at Grace Best. So we looked at Grace Best extensively. And I personally, since I've been on the board, I've toured Grace Best with RTA. We toured Grace Best with Brian Risley from CRP before we ever even knew what direction our school district was going to go in. We asked him just to come in and look at all of our facilities, if you recall. We toured Grace Best. Former school board director Sarah Sampaio asked Iconic Energy to come look at Grace Best, and they're an energy management and sustainability company. She also brought in the Best Grant folks. MA looked at it. We all looked at that building, and from that tour, here's what we found. We found that the building actually serves our homeschool academy students in the newer part, which is the east part of the wing, upstairs. Now, we cannot put preschoolers upstairs because of code. So although it's a great area for education, it cannot work for preschool. It functions well for those students. The location offers a gym, a cafeteria, music and art facilities, and a playground. And these are opportunities that are not typically found in such programs. And our homeschool program is growing. Our current enrollment is 130 students, and it was previously 113. So it's a robust program, and our school district supports it, and we also receive some partial funding. So it is a good symbiotic relationship, and it serves them well. Downstairs in that part of the wing is our transition students. These are our students that are graduated from high school, and again, when I say that we have a responsibility to meet each student where they are, from a young to the older. These are students that have graduated, but they generally are not quite ready for the workforce. And what we did find was when I spoke with those students, that space serves them very well. They have 2 classrooms. The bathrooms have been outfitted to be able to serve our physical disability students. They've got it set up where there's a store for them to go shopping in and to learn. They also go out and are in the workforce as well as they're learning. The one thing we don't provide for them that I personally think that we need to is they don't have a kitchen facility for them to learn from. And this is something that those students have been requesting for a long time. And so that is something I would advocate that we need to serve their needs as well. Could we move those students to a high school? Well, not really, because it doesn't serve them as well. And if we're serving what's best for each of our students, being in the high school, which is where they were located before, they do not feel respected in that space. So we need to respect those students, and we need to respect those educators. We looked at, and to outfit that in the transitions area, it's not cost effective to change that newer wing of Grace Best to a preschool. The amount of work that would go into it, there's so many other more cost effective options out there. So that didn't work. Grace Best serves our robotics. Our robotics students meet on the off season about once a week. On the on season, they're in that building 4 to 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. They have a playing field that they use to build, and that's about the size of a basketball area. They have a workshop that they have transformed. They have from a lathe machine, and those students from that robotics team, we have watched that robotics team grow. Those students, they fund their own transportation, their own entry into the competitions. From those students have gained scholarships. My son, it was because of the robotics team, my own child got a mechanical engineering scholarship. Mark can speak to it as well. His son also benefited from the robotics team. And these students go on to some of the top-notch colleges. So that is an enrichment that is a value to our school district. So the community gym. The gym is used for a number of programs, from our farmers market to when our students take their ACTs, or their AP tests in the spring. And so it pretty much breaks even. So the best long-term plan, and I know this is about preschool, but I'm just going to say it and I'm going to lay it out here again as the elephant in the room, based on everybody that's walked through that, not just 2 architects, but multiple consultants, and is that the old part should be torn down and abated. We can't kick that can down, continue to kick that can down the road. We need to do something about that. And we can, and the other side, the new side, we can continue to gain useful life out of the new part of the building. And this plan, again, was determined to be the most cost effective, not just by RTA, not just by CRP, but by Iconic Energy, as you guys know, Best Grant. So many people have looked at that and come to that same conclusion. This is the east entrance of Grace Best. These are the transitional classrooms you can see, and the homeschool classrooms upstairs. And if you go back, the picture on, that's the robotics. The bottom to your right, that would be a perfect space for a kitchen for those students. Speaks for itself. The cafetorium is also used by the Homeschool Enrichment Academy students as well as the robotics team. That entire area becomes the robotics competition field while they're practicing. This is and the old part of the building is currently houses our science distribution centers. These are where adults go in and assemble our science kits for our students, so that does provide for storage. Next, we narrowed down our options. We looked at the Palmer Lake Elementary School building. Could we transfer our transitional students over there to put preschool in the new part of Grace Best. That was an option, but then again, we're not respecting those transition students. So continuing to use it as a preschool location can be part of a centralization option if we wanted to go there, and that meets their needs very well. We thought about what if we did an 8-plex by Grace Best. It would have 8 classrooms. It can be updated. It's not necessarily ideal for our current preschool configuration, but it could be modified for use. I talked to our engineering departments, our grounds and maintenance, and we could modify it and use it in conjunction with the PLEC and use the playground here, and it could serve as a district-wide preschool. Long term, we could use it later for storage. We could use it for adult learning spaces as our district continues to grow. So this is when we say PLEC, this is the PLEC building. This is the one right here with and that's the 8-plex that you're looking at is right there. We even looked at Big Red. Could we take our admin and put them somewhere else and put a preschool down here? First of all, this doesn't meet code for preschool, so it would take a lot to reconstruction, and again, it's not as cost effective. It doesn't serve their needs as well to move the adults into modular. We could use the modular later, but for preschool, it doesn't make economical sense, and bringing it up to code does not make economical sense. We looked at other things. We looked at buying property outside a district. We looked at, there's a preschool for sale for $750,000. Little Sprouts. Again, the cost, it would still be more cost effective to keep it here on our own site. Home Place Ranch, in the future, when we're looking at future elementary schools later down the road, Home Place Ranch might be a great centrally located area, like Chris, what you were talking about. So here we are in the short term, and here we are faced with this. We need to decide by February what we're going to do next year. As we go forward in a few short weeks, we will have our November results, so that will also give us an idea, regardless of if the bond passes or doesn't pass. We need those classroom spaces, so we need to figure out what we're going to do moving forward, and we need to review those space needs, determine in partnership with our administration and recommendations regarding our preschool locations. So the next steps is that the administration will provide us, the Board of Education, with a recommendation regarding preschool by February. We currently project that the recommendation will include centralizing preschool. We believe that this will allow us to maximize space for our K-5 students at the elementary level, and we believe that this will better serve our preschool students, forestall a boundary change until the next place of elementary schools can be built. Any questions?
First of all, ladies, once again, wonderful presentation. You gave us a lot of information tonight. What are your thoughts about continuing this conversation at a work session meeting?
We predicted that we would need to continue this conversation because there's a lot of information to digest and regurgitate, and by February is when we should have some really solid foundation of what we want to do moving forward. But I don't think that this is a solve it here and now discussion at all, and I don't think Julie or Cheryl feel that way either. But it was a pleasure to investigate, and we spent many hours and many meetings, and we looked. Not a stone went unturned that when we looked at this and thought through, and I think we really put a lot of thought into what would be best for our students, and fiscally and educationally.
And Ms. Upchurch, will you just let us know when you want to put it on a work session? Because once again, wonderful presentation, a lot of information, and we definitely need to spend some time discussing this.
Did we do a deliberative process on this subject?
No, we did not.
We did a forum.
Yeah, but
Well,
we did do it in when we talked about 6th grade
Right.
and preschool, but we didn't actually include it in a deliberative
I
process.
mean, we're talking about, centralizing preschool. I think it's a big enough topic that, we should probably go out and ask our community what their thoughts are on this. I know I would like to hear it.
After mid-November, right?
Correct.
Personally,
That
I
is
would agree.
Very correct.
I would personally agree with you.
Karen, I would just ask one question. That is, you know, we've talked a lot about security at all of our schools, and is the eightplex and is the plec, are they secure? I mean,
It presents the exact same problems we have with mobiles anywhere. It's not. It's certainly plec is a little bit more contained because they generally go in, they don't leave at all. But if you're trying to combine plec and the eightplex, you then have kids crossing back and forth. If they're basically spending most of their day, except for when they go out to recess in one location, doesn't quite present the same problems as like at a school where they might go in for lunch and they might go in for PE and those kinds of things. But in this case, if they're crossing between plec and the eightplex, yeah, then you're.
I would just add that to our deliberative processes. Security to me is
Right.
still paramount.
And obviously, the stationary quality of plec and the fact that it's a brick and mortar building versus a mobile classroom, it's a different kind of a structure, and that you do need to consider that.
Most of our preschoolers stay in their classroom locations, and they would be in the playground area when they're playing, yes, but it would be, I don't see it being any different than if they're in the plec building.
I have to tell you, I have a whole bunch of questions, which is why I think that a work session is a great idea.
I do too.
Thanks.
Thank you again, ladies.
I just want to end with thanking you, because obviously through this conversation, this is tough. I mean, all of the decisions are tough, but just thank you for carrying. I've been in this district 40 years, and you're just carrying on a legacy of doing what's best for kids. You heard it through a parent comment. You heard it through presentations. I've heard you say it tonight individually. So thank you. It is a tough decision, but thank you for carrying on that legacy of doing what's best for kids. And thank you for allowing this opportunity.
Thank you. All right, the next agenda item is policy revisions for first reading. Mr. Foster.
Alrighty.
That one might be dying too.
So you have before you three updates to policies.
Just don't touch it, Bob.
Okay, so you have before you three policies. You have ADD, DAB, and GBEB, which have been revised according to CASB recommendations. As you know, CASB recommends on an annual basis, or actually a monthly, bi-monthly basis, revisions according to state statute. ADD and GBEB have been revised according to 1269, House Bill 181269. And then DAB was revised according to a financial transparency revision in code that they said it was a little more clear and a little more aligned with code that would allow to meet code.
Bob,
So,
can I
yes.
just clarify?
You bet.
So that since there's no marking on this, maybe the part,
Okay.
and this is all related to the bill that Bob is referring to is the one that requires reporting out to
Right.
parents. So do you want to just explain that requirement? And
You
that
bet.
these changes are all related to that requirement?
ADD and GBEB are related to, if you look on page 2 of that, the highlighted section on that, number 15, procedures for notifying parent of an employee's criminal charges when such notification is required by state law was added. Is your copy not
No,
highlighted?
it's not highlighted.
Oh, great. So 15 is new. So item number 15 on ADD is new. Procedures for notifying parents of an employee's criminal charges when such notification is required by state law is a new addition to ADD. That same statute changed GBEB. What? It is highlighted, okay. Then I'm not. I think in the public area, the old policies were updated, correct, Kathy? Yep. And then the board area, the new policies are there, correct? Can you not see? Okay. So on GBEB, there is a section on page 4 of 4 which says notification concerning arrests, which states that district employees shall notify the district when they are arrested for specific criminal offenses in accordance with its policies accompanying regulation. District shall notify parents, students, parents / guardians when district employees are charged with specific criminal offenses required by state law in accordance with applicable board policy. So those two are basic, pretty simple, cut and dry, updating to 1269, House Bill 18-1269, which has very specific notification requirements. Any questions on those two? Nope. And then DAB, like I stated earlier, there is a very minor change in the law on that one. On the second page, 2 of 3 available to the public. And that was just a point of clarification. Any questions on that? Nope. Next is the new read. Is the new policy brought about by House Bill 18-1269. Basically, that identifies all of the criminal statutes that would be, defines employee, parents, and school day. So we defined how many days that we have to notify in case of such an event and under which criminal acts we must notify. And the parent notification is within 2 days after the employee's preliminary hearing and after charges. These all come from CASB. Yep. CASB provides that policy service, as you know. It's a regular updated policy, and after all of the legislative sessions, there are usually a slew of these to go through.
Only from my law enforcement background,
Yes.
Bob's side, I see in letter F on 4F,
Yes,
you know, the criminal, it says a level 1 or level 2 felony drug offense.
correct.
Are we talking a class 1 felony and a class 2 felony?
Yes.
I am very concerned as to why a class 3 felony is not also on there.
That would be a state legislative question. I would encourage not varying too much from this because
No,
they would not report a class 3 to us. We would have no reporting mechanism.
Okay, I just so everybody knows, there's class 1 through class 6, which is what I
Right.
still teach down at the college.
Right.
I get like a 5 and a 6, but I mean, a 1 through 1 and 2 I definitely get without any doubt. I mean, that's drug dealing. Okay.
They were very specific in the law, and why I cautioned against varying that is
No, I
because how
get it.
CBI notifies. Yeah.
I'm confused, but that's okay.
There were many questions left in minds of HR directors.
No, it's very important that we stay on the course, so to speak.
And the statute, if I recall, is pretty specific on what it lays out as well.
Yes.
And I think the important thing too is even if we, although it wouldn't be advisable, even if we chose to add that, we don't get reports on that, so we
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to stay on top of it.
So we'd be giving ourselves a requirement that we have no ability of fulfilling.
And it could create problems
Yeah.
for us down the road.
Exactly. So I'm good. I wanted to make sure it was what I thought.
It's a notification issue, definitely.
I'm good.
Okay. First read?
Thank you, Mr. Foster.
You're welcome.
All right, enrollment dashboard.
Now you have it.
Just as you're walking, just to let you know, I'm going to have one question. How many more kids do we have this year than we had last year? So just put that someplace whenever it fits in.
Okay, preliminary estimated October 3, because October 1 count day was October 3 this year. And these numbers are not final, so please don't hold us to it. We're still scrubbing, and you are writing it down, I see that. But initial enrollment increase looked like 174 students district-wide. You may recall that our demographer estimated about 200 students. Monument Academy is preliminarily is actually down 14 students, so we would have been right at that 190 number. So it looks like the demographer's estimates are very, very close as we continue to describe. Does that make sense?
It does. Should I
Okay.
hold my questions or ask? You tell me.
Go for it.
Okay, so the demographer said we should have 200 more kids than we had last year.
Right.
Okay, now we budgeted, I just want to make sure I got all this right, 90. Is that correct?
That is correct, but that is correct.
So we have 174 more than last year, which would be 84 more than we budgeted for.
Right, but not quite so fast.
Okay, go ahead. Go
Because
ahead.
we were talking about student enrollment, not student full-time equivalent.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and one of the
Yep.
major places that we grew was the homeschool academy, which was fantastic. But unfortunately, we only get half FTE as opposed to whole. So it looks as if we are between 50 and 60 FTE over budget. Back to your original thought process.
Okay,
Okay, does that make sense?
it makes total sense, but
Okay.
if we're just talking kids, bodies, not FTEs,
Right.
we're at 174 more bodies
These-
than last year, which is 84 more than we budgeted for.
Correct, and of note is the point, if you look at the enrollment graph, we continue to gain kids every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't walk by Jim Taylor's office and see a new family coming in.
Okay.
So is the homeschool not in these numbers that are on the dashboard? Because I'm having a hard time reconciling anything I'm hearing to this dashboard. So I see I see as of 10/3 a total of
Get over here.
5472 FTEs. I see in the October count of last year, I believe, 17-18 of 5312, and that's 160 difference. But the difference in the, I guess the difference in the variance column is from the budget, is that correct?
That is correct.
So we're up 111 over the budget.
Hang on, let me get to your question so I can answer it well for you.
So the green column is last year, correct?
Correct.
The red column is the
Is
budget.
this year. Is
That's
this year.
FTE though.
That is
Well,
FTE.
they are all the way
Yeah,
across.
they're all FTE all the way
Oh, okay.
across.
On 10/3, that's
Yeah.
the most recent count that I heard, right?
Right.
And so over the budget, we're 111.5 over the budget. And then we're 48, we budgeted 48.5 more than last year. According to the chart.
Yes,
I'm just,
yes. Yes.
So that's, I was just trying to tie these numbers out to what I was hearing, and
Mhm.
they're different numbers, so I was confused.
So are you referring to the 60 that you heard?
The 200,
Before.
the 190, I heard all sorts of numbers, but not these.
Okay, so no, this does not include Monument Academy's numbers, and this does not include the Homeschool Academy's numbers.
Oh, it does not
No.
include homeschool.
No.
And that's where the biggest growth is.
Right, right, right. So if you would to look, Mr. Taylor, in the documentation that I provided you for your Metro Study Report, which we could bring that up, it does show the reconciliation with the 174 students that I was talking about.
Any more questions?
And again, that's FTE, correct?
Yes, yeah, versus
Okay.
the body.
Is there a breakdown of, okay, there it is, I see it by school. Never mind, I do see that by school. Okay, yeah. And these will continue to grow. If I recall, last year, when we had our October numbers, And then we had a dashboard, I believe it was April, or I believe it was a spring dashboard that showed each month how much our population continues to grow throughout the school year. So is it fair to say that we anticipate we will meet that demographer's numbers by the end of the school year?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I would estimate based on the rate we're growing that we will meet that by semester.
Karen, is it possible that we could actually add Monument Academy and the homeschool to these numbers, just so that we're always looking at our total?
We can do that, and perhaps we can also do something, we can work on this, something that shows the difference between FTE and actual bodies as well, because that seems to be a point of confusion every time we talk about
And
it.
obviously capacities
Yeah.
would be helpful too, by school, right? So we kind of see where we're,
Personally, I think if we include both bodies and FTE and we stay consistent with that, I think it helps to clarify so people aren't confused what's the difference. If we could stay consistent, I think that'd be really helpful.
Wonderful suggestion.
Okay.
I know it adds more work.
No, it's fine. We actually have it, just not in the form for the purposes of this report, but we can simply add it.
If there's nothing else, let's move on to the financial dashboard.
Financial dashboard, we are now 3 months into the school year. We just completed the month of September, which gave us our first year on our new salary, our first month on our new salary schedule. So now we're in the process of looking at budgeted salary and benefits versus actual. That's a major part of our work, obviously, because 85% of our budget is salary and benefits. Thus far, all expenditures are going fine. You will see in the report that I wrote that we will be requesting a budget revision coming up for the FTE that we discussed being over budget, as well as we've gotten some updated utility cost projections from our utility companies. So we'll be requesting a budget adjustment for those two as well.
And any student that comes in after October 3rd, we do not get funding for, correct?
That is correct, unless they happen to be a student that qualifies for exceptional student services. If we have them here by December 1, we do get some exceptional student services dollars for them in the form of IDEA and categorical funding. But not the financial, not the PPOR.
Not the PPR, okay. I'll say that I'll reveal that we almost missed October count. We had a doctor's appointment, and it went, oh no. So I'm curious how many other students we won't receive funding for.
Cheryl can explain that, but there is a kind of a grace period.
Okay.
Yeah, for students that were here before the count date and after the count date, usually until Halloween, if they're here at least one day on each side, we can count the student. If the student was not here before October 3rd, or the count date, then we cannot count that student. Okay. But the state law does allow for an illness, a situation like what you had, or we even had a student try another district and decide they didn't want it and come back. So we'll be able to count that student as well.
Any additional questions? All right, before I make a motion on the consent agenda, is there any items that the board would like to discuss?
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Since I missed the September meeting, what happened with the partnership agreement between the Pikes Peak Council of the Boy Scouts? Number 4.
There was a presentation we discussed. We had some questions from the board and presented those questions to legal counsel. They suggested that including information about providing access during the school day could be opening up that situation for other groups as well, because if we open for one, we open for all. And so the request was made to remove the during the school day options and look at some of the other partnership options. And I believe that was just an opportunity for you all to discuss again at the next work session to decide what you wanted to do with that.
And so this is the revision of the agreement
after the fact, yes. Okay, after you discussed it at the work session again. So
gotcha.
And Tiffany, you weren't there, but I disclosed to the board, I'm the former president of the Boy Scouts.
No, I was there for that meeting.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and I have no problem with you being a part of the
Okay.
discussion, though.
Just want to make sure we're staying transparent.
Matt, I had one question, and that is, when we get this, say Thursday or Friday, whatever, a few days beforehand, it would be nice if we could get the minutes of this meeting a little sooner than 3 days before the next meeting, because I would probably question some of that otherwise, and I don't want to do it, but
Sure.
I don't have enough time to go through all the new information and those minutes in the kind of detail I'd like to go through. So if it's possible,
Okay.
I'd like to see the meeting minutes sooner than 3 or 4 days before the board meeting,
No,
if
that's a-
possible.
That's a reasonable request, and
Kathy, you can work on that.
ideally maybe 7 days in advance.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great suggestion, Mr. Taylor. Any other questions before I make a motion on the consent agenda? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second?
Any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. Ms. Nemeka? Aye?
Aye.
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 I just realized that the GH FIPS item is listed in the consent agenda item.
We pulled it.
Okay. Well, I know you pulled it under the item in the agenda, but it's
That was
also
in the
still
consent
listed in the
agenda.
consent.
Well, it was in the consent agenda, but isn't
Okay.
this all the agenda? And if we,
Okay, sorry. It was
well,
listed.
if we need to, I could,
No, it's good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
We are clean.
all right, thank you. You know, Karen, you're always very thorough, and I appreciate that.
I forgot we pulled it, so.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Nemeka? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.